Good morning, everybody, and welcome along to this morning's BCP Planning Committee. And again, on behalf of everyone here, can I apologise for the delay? Jill's blaming herself, but I'm not blaming Jill. Technology is what it is, and sometimes it goes wrong. So we will carry on straight into the meeting this morning, and I will firstly introduce all of the members present. We have myself, Councillor Kelsey, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Barron, Councillor Borthwick, Councillor Dion, Councillor Farquhar, Councillor Hall, Councillor Hilliard, Councillor Marion Lepedevin, Councillor McCormack, Councillor Felicita Rice, and Councillor Tony Trent. We also have a selection of officers with us this morning who will be taking part throughout the meeting this morning. Going straight on into the agenda, the first item is apologies. Do we have any apologies, please, Jill?
Thank you, Chairman.
And may I ask you to read out the housekeeping notice as well? Thank you.
So please note this meeting of the Planning Committee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate decision in this discretion in this matter lies with the Chairman. For those in the room, if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point under the Brayley Road flyover. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Please note this includes members' laptops. Please turn off laptop cameras and microphones and turn the volume all the way down to ensure no disruption or feedback. Thank you. So apologies have been received from Councillor Simon Bull, Councillor Malcolm Davies, Councillor Bob Lawton and Councillor Tony O'Neill. And item 2, substitutes, Councillor Brian Dean is here for Councillor O'Neill today.
Thank you, Jill. And members, does any members have any declarations of interest on items on the agenda today, please? Councillor Hilliard, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's relating to 6C. I'm the BCP appointed governor on the Hospitals Trust, so I won't be participating. I'll be leaving the meeting then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hilliard. Any further? Councillor Farquhar?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my declaration of interest is that I believe that I am predetermined on the first item of business, so I'll be speaking as a ward councillor in objection, if that's acceptable to the Chair.
Certainly is. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Farquhar. Much appreciated. Next item is confirmation of minutes. Do members agree to me signing the minutes for previous meetings? Yep. Thank you very much. And moving on, we have public issues. After the officer presentation on each application, we will hear public speakers, followed by any ward councillors and any other councillors who wish to speak. Schedule of planning applications. There are 3 reports listed for today's agenda, and we will move straight on to the first one, which is item 6A, 9 Ravine Road in Bournemouth. And I would ask your case, please, Peter.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair. Just trying to share the screen. You see my presentation?
We can, thank you, Peter.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. So the application side is 9 Ravine Road, located in Bournemouth. We've got exactly the same proposal in terms of submitted drawings and details as those which were refused by Planning Committee in November 2022. So the application, the current application description relates to reconsideration of a previous application and also bases some justification on the recent prior approval application for demolition of existing house. In terms of the site location, we're talking about a detached house set on double plots located to the western side of Ravine Road. Site is located within predominantly residential setting with mostly detached houses, large traditional detached houses. This is the application site, which consists of detached house, approximating built in approximately 1930s, and we can see to the side is a empty part, which could be considered as a part of as being as double plot when comparing to other properties nearby. Again, in terms of street scene, we can see mostly detached houses set on large plots with rear gardens and some soft landscape to the front, but also we have examples of hard standing and parking spaces set at the front of those properties. This is the rear garden view. That's the back of the existing house, and we can see the side garden space adjacent to neighbouring property. In terms of recent planning history, as we discussed previously, in November 2022, there was approval for a block of 3 flats on this empty site plot, let's say, of the existing application site. Also was for sort of detached looking block of flat. The proposal was for 2 maisonettes and 1 flat with parking spaces set to the front. The latest committee refusal dated November 2022 related again to exactly the same drawings, exactly the same proposal as this one which is presented today, and the application was refused based mostly on the dwelling being considered as a local head, as having a local head. So yeah, so the main refusal reason was that the existing dwelling house was considered to be a local heritage value, and therefore retention should be supported.
Sorry, Peter, could I just hold you there for a second, please?
Mhm.
Councillor Borthwaite, you need to turn your computer off.
That's not, yeah. Right, mate. Done it there, mate. Yeah, got it. Yeah, done it.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, so then after planning committee refusal, a prior approval application was submitted to the local authority, which was then approved. I just want to make a few notes in terms of this sort of application, just to avoid some further confusions. So this application could be, it's also called permitted development. So it's something which can be done under permitted development rights, which in this case would allow the applicant to demolish the existing house without the need to apply for planning permission. Is obviously subject to complying with some requirements of this permitted development rights class. And in case of this application, this actually fallback position, which would allow developer to demolish existing house, is considered to be a fallback position. So on this slide, we can see just a few points why it was considered that the demolition of this existing dwelling house could be would actually be complying with permitted development rights. And so we can see just a few points which basically makes the correct justification why this was approved. So I just want to again make a note, it's not planning permission, it's just approval and kind of indication to the applicant that he's got his rights to actually demolish the existing house. And again, the purpose of prior approval procedure is to ensure that method of statement and site restoration is done in an appropriate manner, and obviously all impacts will be set to minimum. And also, I just want to make a note that there was a caveat to this prior approval application, and the applicant said he wants to comply with BAT mitigation survey, which says the house shouldn't be demolished between. Should be demolished after so between March and November 2023 is due to BAT safety and obviously mitigation requirements. And also, again, I want to make clarification, permitted development rights are outside the local plan policy, including neighbourhood plan control. So just going back to, sorry, now I can see, I can hear somebody in the background again. So the kind of application is for,
Peter.
Yep.
Peter, are you in the room with someone else with a microphone on?
No, just on my own. I can see Councillor Trent. I think it's on as well.
Tony, have you got your microphone on, Tony?
No, just no.
No, you have. You need to mute yourself, Tony. It's okay, Jill's done it for us. Sorry, Peter, carry on, please.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, going back to the application. So the candidate is exactly the same proposal as this, which was refused by planning committee. So we've got a pair of semi-detached 4-bedroom houses with rear gardens, parking to the front, two tandem parking spaces, and some soft landscaping. So this is a site plan and how the application will look like. In terms of design, it has been designed to mimic traditional detached houses. There will be just single access to the front and another access to the side, again, just to mimic and make appearance of detached traditional house, not just a pair of semi-detached houses, which wouldn't be fully in keeping with a street scene. Again, in terms of street scene, it's not considered those two houses would over-dominate the street scene or the adjacent neighbours. And just going back to policy, so within the officers' report, we can see that it was agreed that there will be some conflict with BAP1 policy of the neighbourhood plan, which supports architectural and local heritage value buildings, and those buildings should be preserved. However, the second part of this policy also required that any development should be of acceptable design, appropriate density and form. So this is kind of related to CS22 of the core strategy plan, which again allows new houses outside the preferred locations, as in case of this application, but they need to respect the scale, appearance and density, plot size, and shouldn't affect amenity and living conditions of the adjacent neighbours. So the officer's finding within the officer's report confirms that the proposal as submitted is acceptable in terms of scale, appearance and density, and there won't be any harmful impact on neighbouring properties. In terms of non-designated heritage asset interpretation, so it is officers' view that the building is not in itself of sufficient quality to amount as a non-designated heritage asset. So there's a question: is the existing building actually important to the wider town? It is agreed that there is some local heritage value and basically makes a good contribution to the street scene and a local setting, but then there's a question: is actually important to the wider town? And just to finalize the question of non-designated heritage assets, we should have in mind paragraph 203 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which says in making planning decision, there should be weight directly and or indirectly to which assess the effect on non-designated heritage assets, and there should be balanced judgment in making decision about in relation to scale and any harm or loss of the significance of the heritage asset. Just to summarize, this application again is exactly the same proposal as this discussed in November 2022. We got proposed two pairs of semi-detached 4-bedroom houses. The scale and design is acceptable. There won't be any harmful impact granting a refusal on neighbouring properties, and as we can see in officers' finding, there is some real prospect fallback position in terms of existing prior approval application, and also officers do not consider that the existing dwelling house is sufficient to be justified as a non-designated heritage asset. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Over to Jill.
Thanks, Chairman. There is a written statement from Joanna and Paul Pritchard, which I will read out on their behalf, and after that, Mr. Robert Wilson is in the room and will come and speak to the committee. I still strongly object to the above planning application. If the council rejected the developer's original application, then I don't understand how this application can be approved, as the application is still to demolish an existing house to build 4 houses, 3 floors high, in a road of detached one-house plots. The only reason 4 townhouses are being built is so the developer can make as much money as possible from the site. The overdevelopment of one site is totally at odds with the council's urban intensification plan. Only 1 extra detached house should be built on the site, in keeping with the rest of the road. Under the Boscombe and Folkestone neighbourhood plan, ravine and surrounding roads should be protected. The BNP plan states, policy CS21, this area is protected from urban intensification. New housing is only allowed in accordance with the scale, character, appearance and density of current houses and must not harm living conditions. Policy BAP 1. Proposals involving the demolition of existing buildings will not be supported unless there are exceptional circumstances. This is not an exceptional circumstance. There is no need for 3 additional houses in Ravine Road. Policy BAP 6 and 7. The number and type of new homes and additional dwellings will be provided through sympathetic conversion and extension of existing buildings. This could be easily achieved with the current property providing a large family home, possibly for a multi-generational family. HM Planning Inspectorate's view of these roads. The Secretary of State's appointed Planning Inspector, Mr. Bale, of the Planning Inspectorate, stated on 5th of July 2021, having personally visited this area on the 21st of June 2021, with respect to these very streets leading from the cliff in Boscombe Manor and including Ravine Road, although the cliff top has been developed into flats, the roads running down from the cliff top here are single family houses, which any proposal to change would result in clear harm to the area in character and appearance. These buildings make a positive contribution to the area and should be thought of as non-designated heritage assets. This road already has parking issues from Bournemouth Collegiate School, staff, parents and students. Adding another 3 houses will make parking even more difficult. There are no semi-detached houses in Ravine Road, and placing 4 on one site is overdevelopment. There is no need for this development, and if the council approves the application, then they are going against their own plans. I strongly object. Mr. Robert Wilson, if you'd like to come forward and...
You do indeed. You have 5 minutes. You have 2.5 minutes, Mr. Yeah, 2.5 minutes.
Good morning, councillors and Mr. Chairman. This is an example of a developer treating the council and residents with contempt. This is the same proposal which sets a dangerous precedent and was refused last November, which had 440 objections against it. Today we have a further 191 objections, only 4 in favour, 3 from people that don't live in the area. And a petition which arrived on Tuesday to the council of 200 objections, some from builders and developers that live in the area and think that what's been proposed is outrageous. These are people who are residents, and we have people who are protesting outside the house in Ravine Road. Democracy is speaking loud and clear. Save this 102-year-old house, which is habitable. It is a heritage house and had real buyers who wished to buy it, had it surveyed and wished to live there and love it. HM Planning, as you heard, said that this area consists of family housings, which any proposal to change would result in clear harm. Those were the words, in character and appearance. What you'll be presented with is a fait accompli. The demolition by a developer with no respect for this protected heritage area. The Boscombe and Folkestone neighbourhood plan passed with a 94% mandate. What councillor has ever been voted in by any such thing? That is a clear mandate. And within that it must be taken into account in all planning and related discussions. As you heard, policy CS21, the area is protected from urban intensification, and new housing is only allowed in scale, character and density of this area. Infilling of space is not allowed, demolition is not supported, and sympathetic conversion is required. These are multiple planning requirements which are being flouted. 4 large, 4-bedroom, 3-storey, completely alien architecture. I cannot see how it was said that they fit into the road and are being crammed into a site of one house and its garden. In a 1920s English heritage.
Your 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Got the other speaker.
And speaking in support is Matt Annan.
Thank you.
The planning officer has comprehensively explained the full details of this revised scheme to you in his opening presentation, but I'd just like to go over the history. Members will recall a previous application was only narrowly refused, 6 votes to 5, at November's committee last year. The sole reason for refusal related to the loss of the existing building. Following that, a prior approval for the demolition of the existing building was granted, which confirmed that demolition of the existing dwelling was lawful under the General Permitted Development Order. I can inform members that a demolition notice has now been served on the council, and the applicant's ecologists, ABR Ecology, have been instructed to secure the BAT licence. Once the BAT licence has been obtained, the existing dwelling will be demolished lawfully in accordance with the prior approval. Following the prior approval, an appeal against the refused application, the one was at the November's committee, was submitted along with an application for an award of costs, which at present is ongoing. At the same time, an identical application to that of the original scheme for 4 houses was submitted, and this is the one that's before you today. One further point to add is that as of yesterday, when it was sent by the council's legal officer to myself, the applicants have now resolved the comment regarding this section 106 in your report, as a signed and completed unilateral has been deposited with the council's legal officer, and payment in respect of the contributions to the council have been made. In light of the permission being granted to demolish the existing building and the applicant's commitment to seeing this through, this negates the sole reason for refusal on the previous scheme. To raise new reason for refusal today on an identical scheme would be wholly unreasonable and be left open to scrutiny. Whilst members may not be happy about it, given the local representation and sensitive timing of this committee, looking purely at the planning merits of this scheme, there is no material planning reason why planning permission should be refused today. I respectfully ask members to grant permission in line with the officer's recommendation. I just want to come at some of the other points. In terms of the principle, BCP have a shortfall of housing, and as such, the benefits provided from the supply of new homes must have significant weight and a tilted balance in favour of granting permission, as set out in paragraph 32 of your report. It was claimed that proposed development conflicted with BAP1, but refusal only specifically mentioned one sentence relating to the retention of a building of architectural or local heritage value, which would be supported. However, as confirmed by the council's professional conservation and planning officers, the existing building is not of any architectural value and lacks any notable heritage value, 48 of your case officer's report. The rest of the neighbourhood plan, which development fully complies with the aims of, seems to have been ignored. Aim 2 of the neighbourhood plan encourages schemes to provide better homes for existing residents, the housing stock, with a presumption in favour of family dwellings. As noted in 36 of your officer's report, 85% of the people agreed with this aim. This scheme removes a large 7-bedroom house, which is unaffordable and impractical for most families, and replaces it with 4 reasonable-sized family dwellings. BAP 2 encourages good designs. The dwellings are a traditional design with bay window and gable features, decorative chimneys, ridge tiles and roof forms, incorporating sensitively sized dormers and sprocketed eaves. In addition, they will be highly sustainable using modern energy efficient technologies such as incorporating solar power and heat pumps in full accordance with adopted policy. Aim 7 encourages developments to make the best use of land by identifying sites that are underused and have potential to be redeveloped. This is a double plot. The existing house in number 9, The next house is house number 13, clearly indicating that number 11 is missing in the street scene, and thus is considered to be a vacant and underused plot. Following on from this, neighbourhood plan states residential densities in excess of 100 dwellings will not be supported. The 4 houses across this double plot, all with road frontages, would only have a density of 36.3 dwellings per hectare, well below this maximum density, fully in keeping with the character of the area and the road. In terms of the amenity, all dwellings would meet the national minimum space standards, and all habitable rooms have been arranged to receive ample levels of natural daylight with good outlooks. In terms of highways, your office in support of the scheme, which provides 2 off-street car parking spaces per dwelling, electric vehicle charging points, and a store for 4 cycles for each dwelling. Ecology, as with the previous scheme, the council ecologists have no objections to the proposal and are very satisfied with the net gains proposed for biodiversity. Councillors, the applicants who are here today are not national house builders. They're a husband and wife team who live locally in Southbourne and build beautiful houses for local people. They're just finishing 2 semi-detached homes on a single plot on Browning Avenue, both of which sold on their first viewing. Such is the quality, finish and demand of the houses that they build. This scheme would help the council meet its housing targets and comply with the aims of the BAP Folkestone Neighbourhood Plan, which states there's an overwhelming need for family housing. Not only this, but in the past, when I've presented deputations to the committee in support of flatter developments, members regularly say they want more houses. Here we have 4 family houses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we have 2 ward councillors with us this morning to speak, and I believe the first one is going to be Councillor Jones. You have your 5 minutes, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In November last year, the Planning Committee rightly refused an application for the demolition of a 1930s period property at 9 Ravine Road and the subsequent erection of 4 dwellings in its place. Since that time, permission to demolish the property has been afforded to the developer under the truly woeful piece of legislation that is permitted development. One that totally ignores the key policy of the Boscombe and Folkestone Neighbourhood Plan and therefore the will of local people. We now have before us the second part of the original application to erect 4 dwellings on this site. The application has generated hundreds of objections from local residents and fails to adhere to the neighbourhood plan or the current local plan, namely policy CS21. New housing is only allowed in accordance with the scale, character, appearance and density of current houses and must not harm living conditions. 4 houses on the plot of the existing one represents urban intensification. It's completely out of scale, the house designs are out of character, and the appearance for the rest of the road and the proposals represents a much higher density of housing, which I consider harmful to living conditions. Policy BAP1 Neighbourhood Plan, the People's Plan, spaces between buildings should not be infilled. Placing 4 large houses on the space of a single house and garden and filling the plot all the way across is clearly infilling and intensification of the existing space. Policy BAP 6 and 7. The number and type of new homes and additional dwellings will be provided through sympathetic conversion and extension of existing buildings. The present house is already in keeping with the architecture of the road. A sympathetic conversion or extension is easily achievable. It is clear from the petition against this application what residents think of it. This application is not needed on our area and certainly is not wanted. I urge the Planning Committee to make the right decision and refuse this application without hesitation and without question. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. And Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you, Chair. If you're all right, if I speak from the seat.
If you can speak from there, then once you're finished speaking, if you could move to the back.
Excellent, no problem.
Thank you very much, Councillor Farquhar.
And I'd like to thank and recognise and draw the committee's attention to the other representations that have happened today. To sum it up in a sentence for me, if the application had come back today to build on a single empty plot, then I reviewed the discussion and the debate on the 17th of November. That would sail through. No issue whatsoever. The issue here is the demolition of a perfectly serviceable building. And the issue here is something which is called permitted development and prior approval. So with that in mind, I've just scribbled down my representation to the committee just now. The responsibility of this committee, a planning committee made up of members, elected members, is to actually look at decisions that are large and sensitive, that are not normally handled by the actual planning authority itself. I've seen the presentation as regards the fallback position, what's termed the fallback position of the prior approval for demolition. I think that's very pertinent because the fallback position is exactly what's happening here. It's the exact same plan which has been presented, the exact same plan that was refused by this committee on the 17th of November. It's the exact same plan that involves the demolition of a perfectly serviceable building. The reasons for refusal given on the 17th of November are very, very important here because we've had a presentation from behalf of the applicant who on the Bournemouth Echo dated the Bournemouth Daily Echo dated the 7th of March said, a statement submitted on behalf of the applicant Southbourne Homes Limited said, because consent has been granted to demolish the existing house, and this will be underway once the weather improves in April time, this removes the sole reason for refusal. With this being the existing dwelling house is considered of local heritage value and therefore the retention should be supported. The applicant itself has indicated that they believe that this is the sole refusal. The reason it is not the sole refusal, as pointed out in the planning application, planning officer's presentation, but didn't name all the reasons, is because of BAT 1, which we heard about, but it's also the proposed works would also be contrary to the provisions of paragraph 194, 197, 203, 204, 208 of the NPPF and the planning policies CS21, which another representation pointed out, and CS41 of the Bournemouth Local Plan Core Strategy. This is not the sole reason, the demolition of this property. The demolition of this property is what's been objected to by this planning committee. And just how much longer do I have, please? You have 2 minutes. Thank you. What I found very interesting that was actually brought out that the officer's opinion is that this is not of a designated local value, local heritage value. However, as we heard in one of the presentations, the planning inspectorate has actually viewed all of these roads in these surrounding areas and actually stated, as per CS21, is that the building inspectorate, any proposal to change should be thought of harmful to the area because it is a non-designated heritage value area. So we have a planning officer for the authority that says it's not, and we have the planning inspectorate that says it is. So what I would propose, or what I would urge the committee to consider, is to refuse this application that's come back unchanged for the exact same grounds which you actually refused it on the 17th of November. And I'll just read those out. Well, I don't need to read those out because it's on the public record in the minutes. And allow the planning inspectorate to actually make a decision on behalf of the residents that had 440 objectives, 191 objectives just to this one alone, and a petition of over 200 against the demolition. I'm asking you as the planning committee to view this as a sensitive application, exercise your powers and refuse it for the exact same reasons, and allow the planning inspectorate, who identified that this was an area of non-designated local heritage and demolition would be harmful to the area, to make a decision. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Peter, is there anything that you've heard in any of the deputations that you would like to come back on before I open up to members, please?
Yeah, possibly. I think that there's this ongoing discussion about inspectors' interpretation of the site and reference to 9 ravine roads. We did try to find this appeal decision, and probably the most relevant and probably the relevant one, it's for number 5 Woodland Avenue decision dated 5th July 2021. So maybe I'll quickly share my screen. So you see that window. So that's the appeal decision, and I just want to make a note that there was like loads of objectors referred to actually strictly to the application side. If we're talking about the same appeal decision, unless I'm wrong, and someone can confirm, actually we're talking about the different decision. In paragraph 11, we can see that inspector said there's no substantive evidence to counter the council's view that the existing building being a part of the early development of this part of Bournemouth, so I'm assuming Woodland Avenue, Ravine Road, and this part of Bournemouth should be regarded as a non-designated heritage asset. So I just want to highlight the fact that actually we could not find, unless there is some separate appeal decision, but I'm pretty sure we're talking about the same appeal decision, there was never reference to the application side, 9 Ravine Road. So I think that that's pretty important to actually highlight the fact, because there is this ongoing discussion about interpretation of planning inspectorate or planning inspector, and there was a clear reference to number 9 Ravine Road, where actually we couldn't find it actually in our records. So yeah, so that's the only thing I want to add at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Lepedwin, please.
Thank you. Eventually, I'm going to be seeking clarification, but I also want to make a point first, and it's all to do with this prior approval and permitted development. I'm struggling, given that the committee, albeit narrowly, only 4 or 5 months ago, said this house should not be demolished, that how, in a sense, the officers can wipe away that decision and say, oh, yes, it can be. And the clarification, well, an explanation of that, first of all, but also a clarification that if, again, we were to turn this application down today, would the house, would that be it? Would the house be demolished? Because I think that could affect our thinking.
Could I bring in Mr. Hodges on that one, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So the permitted development rights always apply in relation to demolition. So as set out in the report, they allow the demolition of particular types of buildings where they're not protected because they're listed in a conservation area, they're not a drinking establishment, or they're not an asset of community value. So they apply equally across the whole area. So that's always been the case. What the applicant has done is sought to establish a fallback position, which says that if we attach significant weight to retention of the building, the issue is that they have a right to go and demolish it under those rights which are granted nationally. So in determining the application, we have to have due regard to that potential fallback position, and we see that Piotr set out in the report how we think the strength of that fallback position. I'm just going to find the particular paragraph, but it's key that those rights have always existed, in short answer, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges.
So basically, our hands are tied.
Yes. In a short, frank answer.
Thank you. I hope that is spelt out loud and clear to residents who will not be happy if we accept this, and even if we don't accept it, it's going to happen.
Yep.
So what's the point?
Councillor McCormick.
Thanks, Chair. So I wasn't here at the last meeting, so this is the first time I'm seeing this application, and I find it quite interesting. And as Marion's pointed out, a lot of the argument against this is kind of irrelevant because the property can be demolished anyway. So then you move on to the next bit, and I find this very interesting, the BAP 6 in the neighbourhood plan, which specifies very specifically what they would support being built. And a lot of the objections were talking about overdevelopment. If you were to stick to the BAP 6, you would end up with even more overdevelopment if you were to stick to it quite rigidly. And that's making me want to support accepting this today, because an alternative would probably be even further over development, in my view, of any future proposal. So it's like what Marion says, you're kind of in a corner here. There's not really anywhere to go. So that's my thinking anyway. I don't know if anybody else agrees, but it seems to be.
No, I'm minded to agree with you, Councillor Hilliard, McCormick, because we look at one section of any policy, then we look at another part of another policy, and they sort of contradict each other somewhat. And I think you're absolutely right. If we didn't allow this, the density would be totally greater than what was there originally. So it is one that members have to think about. And it was a very close vote on the last one. There was only one vote on the last application. So members need to think long and hard about how they're going to go on this one, I think. Any other members at this moment in time? Sorry, Peter, you want to come back on something? You're muted, Peter, sorry.
So, Chair, in terms of density preference within the neighbourhood plan, if we look at paragraph 7.14, there's a table below on page 41 of the neighbourhood plan, and it sets out some good examples of development in BAP area, and there's a reference to number 36 Browning Avenue as having 28 dwellings per hectare, and also 24 Browning Avenue 46 dwellings per hectare. So in terms of this application, we're talking about 36 dwellings per hectare. So if we refer to neighbourhood plan policy or neighbourhood plan itself, it will be considered as a good example of development. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any further comments from members on this one? Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is one where we have to remember our role as the planning committee, and it does often involve making decisions that a lot of people really don't like, because whilst we sit on this committee, we're here to represent, to make decisions based on planning policy, and not necessarily as purely representatives of those who have elected us. Most of the time, as Councillor Jones and Councillor Farquhar are demonstrating, we don't sit on applications that the residents who actually voted for us specifically are concerned with, and it's a balance that we have to walk, and it's a dilemma that we as planning committee members face quite often. This one is frustrating at times because it is a very nice house that we will be losing, but as we've already heard, the applicant has already put in place everything they need to legally to demolish it. And I would argue that securing something of high quality, which I believe this is, to replace it, it has now become of greater importance than retaining what's there, however sad we may be to lose it. Because what is going in there is of high quality in my personal opinion. It matches the street scene quite nicely, certainly from the outside. On the inside, it may be a tad different, being semi-detached rather than detached. But from the outside to the most observers who will be walking down that road, it looks like the same size of house that you'll see predominantly along the rest of the road. I think that we have to remember that the neighbourhood plan is a powerful thing, but whilst permitted development and prior approval exists, it's absolutely right that the neighbourhood plan should not overrule that, otherwise it negates the entire point of permitted development and prior approval existing. And we are here to make decisions based on the policies in front of us. And I certainly can't see any planning reasons to refuse this. The two reasons for refusal, as per the minutes of the last meeting back in November, one was the lack of consent to the demolition, and that has obviously been taken out of our hands. And the second part was the contributions to the heathlands, and that, as we've heard, has also been sorted out in this application. To pull up new reasons for refusal would show an admission that we were lax in our duties at the previous committee. And I can see absolutely no planning reason to refuse this, and given that there wasn't a glut of speakers, Chair, to come after me, I'll make a move that we go with the officer's recommendation and grant this.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Are there any other movers at this moment in time? I am happy to second that. One of my reasons for wanting to second it is the property there at the moment is a very large property. and is probably unaffordable for the majority of people. I don't think the majority of people could afford to buy that and live in it as one family home. With this, we are giving 4 families an opportunity to buy a property, get on the property market ladder and move into somewhere which is a house rather than a small boxy type flat. And I think that's really essential because that does fit in with the BAP. They want houses, they don't want flats. And I think that fits in with it. And it gives 4 families who may not be, totally able to afford a massive mortgage, but they will be able to hopefully afford one of these. And I think that's our job, is to make sure that people have affordable housing, be it whether these go out to rentals or not. So I'm more than happy to support the move to grant this. And I will just note that I did actually vote against the move to refuse it at the last application. So I'm being totally consistent in my views on this property. I didn't agree with the last one, and I am agreeing with the officer on this one again today. Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to pop something in there. The lead officer's just pointed out there is a typo on condition 22 of 9 Ravine Road. So I'd just like to add into my move that be delegated to the interim head of planning to correct that.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So, members, there being no further speakers indicating, we will move to a vote on this one. And I will call names in turn in order again. Those in favour, please say for. Those against, please say against. So, Councillor Barron.
For.
Councillor Borthwick.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Hilliard.
For.
Councillor Lepedevin.
For.
Councillor McCormick.
For.
Councillor Rice.
For.
Councillor Trent.
Against.
And Councillor Dion.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
And myself, Councillor Kelsey, for. Could I have the numbers, please, Jill?
Thanks, Chairman. That's 9 votes in favour and 2 against.
Thank you very much. So that application is granted in line with the officer's recommendation and the report. So may I thank everyone for taking the time to come in this morning and to put their parts across. And thank you very much, Peter, for your report. I'll take a 5-minute recess, members, while we wait for the next, for people to clear the room and move on to the next application. Thank you. Okay, members, welcome back into session, and we will move straight on with the agenda again, and we will go to item 6B, 167A Lower Blandford Road in Parkstone. And I would ask Shelley if you could present your case, please, Shelley, and welcome along to Councillor Brooke, who is also online there.
Thank you, Chair. Just checking everyone can see the beginning of the slideshow.
We can, thank you, Shelley.
Thank you. This application 167A Lower Blandford Road, and it's for a change of use from a ground floor shop, which is an existing news agency, which is a Class C retail use, to a sui generis hot food takeaway use. The site is within the primary shopping frontage of the Broadstone District Centre, and the application includes a new contemporary shop front and the installation of the extraction equipment on the rear elevation. The bottom right photo here shows the rear elevation. There are changes on the ground floor inside, which will consist of a customer area at the front, preparation areas, washing up areas, a cold room, an open store, a WC and separate office area at the rear with rear access doors, which lead out onto the rear servicing area where the bins are stored. The elevational drawing shows the changes to the shop front, which will be mostly glazed with an aluminium frame, and the addition of the extraction equipment on the rear elevation. It's a side elevation showing this too. We are happy that the impact on nearby residential properties is compatible with the mixed use of a district centre, and the Environmental Health Officer is happy with the details of extraction, its proposed use, and the attenuation measures identified in the SONOS report, which will be secured by condition. There are no objections from BCP Highways officers or BCP Waste officers due to the existing arrangement and relationship within the district centre and the availability of car parking and rear servicing. A commercial refuse management plan will be secured by condition. In recommending this application for approval, we have had regard to the recent appeal decision at 189 Lower Blandford Road, dated February this year, for a similar change of use from Class E retail to a hot food takeaway. The inspector allowed the appeal as the proposed hot food takeaway use was regarded as appropriate for the district centre and compliant with policy PP22. And the land use map here provided by the applicants confirms that the level of non-retail uses within the primary shopping frontage would not breach the 50%, which is required by PP22. Therefore, for the reasons set out in the report, we recommend the application for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Jill.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a written statement of objection to read out on behalf of Kate Moores. I am writing to object wholeheartedly in relation to the proposed pizza takeaway planned for 167A Lower Blandford Road. We live at 1 Grange Road, which is within 100 metres of the building, and the car park opposite our bungalow will no doubt be used by patrons and delivery drivers. The increase in noise, parking issues, antisocial behaviour and litter will be unacceptable. It will affect the mental health of me and my young family, and that is not what I want living in a quiet area. Does Broadstone not have enough fast food establishments already? The council have only just approved of another identical pizza establishment a few doors along the exact same road, which will mean this new proposal would mean 5 pizza takeaways in Broadstone alone. Please can someone explain why the council are not considering the local residents on Grange Road? After 6 p.m, our road is very quiet, but this proposal will, without a doubt, change that. Our property directly overlooks the car park at the rear of 167A. The expected installation of air conditioning equipment and increased nighttime economy traffic noise will have a significant impact on my young family, all who sleep in rooms facing the car park and the proposed takeaway. This type of establishment will be open during uncertain of the property to come and go. In the hot summer months, we need to have our windows open, but if this proposal is agreed, we may not be able to do this in the future due to the noise late at night, which is absolutely unacceptable and unfair. At present, the car park, where the rear of the establishment is located, is very rarely used after 6 p.m. However, if this is approved, this will no doubt lead to more parking issues, which are already a daily issue. There will be delivery drivers who won't even consider the residents living on Grange Road. Motorists already ignore the parking restrictions in Grange Road, constantly blocking our driveway, and we never ever see a parking enforcement officer in the area. My husband also works on call for the emergency services and needs to leave our property without issue. We robustly oppose to this planning application on numerous grounds and plead to the council members to reject this proposal. Speaking in support, we have, bear with me, on behalf of the applicants, Stacey Pester, who is joining us on Teams.
Stacey, would you like to go ahead, please?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Stacey Pester and I am from Pegasus Group. The applicant has worked in a positive and proactive manner with the county's officers throughout the course of the application and has responded to any concerns which were raised. The main concerns that have been raised relate to the impact on neighbour amenity due to noise, the concentration of food outlets within the district centre, the negative impact on vitality and viability due to the number of non-retail units, parking and highway safety, and the impact on existing businesses. In order to ensure that there are no harmful impacts in terms of noise or odour, a noise impact assessment was submitted in support of the action. Conditions have been proposed to ensure that there will be no detrimental impact in terms of noise or odour by ensuring that the development will be brought into use until the extraction and ventilation and odour control system has been installed in full at the premises prior to the first use. Given the operator is a pizza takeaway, the cooking processes used are bake-in and not deep fat frying like other hot food takeaways. Therefore, odour and grease will be kept to a minimum. The submitted noise impact assessment concludes that there would not be an unacceptable level of noise from plant equipment or car movements. Furthermore, a condition has been suggested to restrict the opening hours and delivery times to 8 AM to 11 PM every day. This is in line with other uses nearby. It is also worth noting that the unit could open as a restaurant within use class E without planning permission and could be open until 11 PM or later. With regards to parking and traffic generation, the site benefits from a car park and service yard to the rear. On-street parking is also available along Lower Blandford Road, which is restricted to 30 minutes between 8 AM and 6 PM Monday to Saturday. Furthermore, the Council's Highways Officer did not object to the proposals on highway safety grounds and concluded that they support the proposal as it is unlikely to significantly more impact on the highway than the existing use. The proposed change of use would not change the predominantly retail character of the district centre and would therefore not adversely impact upon its vitality and viability. A detailed land use survey was carried out in support of the application. This identifies that 63% of units within the primary shopping frontage are within retail use. The change of use of this unit would reduce this to 61% and therefore is not in breach of policy PP22, which requires 50% of units to remain in retail use. The proposals also include a new shopfront which retains an active frontage at ground floor level in accordance with this policy. Overall, the site is in an appropriate location for a new hot food takeaway and is compliant with the relevant national and local policies. It would provide an active use and provide a number of employment opportunities for young people in the area. For these reasons, it is respectfully requested that you follow your officer's recommendation and approve the application subject to the necessary conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pester. And we also have Ward Councillor online with us this morning. Councillor Brooke, would you like to speak, please?
Fine, thank you, Chair. Before I start, can I just do a sound check? Can you hear me all?
We can, thank you, Councillor Brooke.
Fine, thank you. The commercial section of Lower Blandford Road, locally known as the Broadway, is predominantly an area of mixed retail activity at ground level and office or storage use at first floor level. Several of the properties with 3 or 4 stories have their upper floors converted to flattered residential development. While having survived both the 2008 recession and the effects of COVID, it is showing signs of changing shopping and banking habits, as well as an already over-concentration of takeaway facilities. An independent eat-in unit, the Pizza Box, has recently closed due to the intense competitive takeaway market. The last 3 remaining banks have also closed since November, and a successful independent gift shop was forced to close due to the lease changing to monthly renewal. This unit is now to be occupied by yet another takeaway facility, Pizza Hut. The application site, 167A Lower Blandford Road, is located in a relatively modern brick-built commercial block at the southern end of the Broadway and on the western side of the road. It sits between a funeral director's office and an optician's. If the application is approved, it would replace a long-standing unit, thus reducing further the retail and commercial Class E offer in this significant district high street. The newsagent supplies other stationery products in addition to newspapers and magazines, and is the only genuine newsagent in this district centre, adding to the variety of retail outlets present. If approved, it will become yet another hot food takeaway and add to what is an overabundance of such activity. Local fast food outlet Faraway Pizza has recently opened a few doors from this application site. It is also very close to 189 Lower Blandford Road, soon to be Pizza Hut. Is next to Daniel's Fish and Chip Shop, also now a totally takeaway unit and using Just Eat and Deliveroo. We are already seeing the impact of this with an almost continuous stream of delivery mopeds and cars which park wherever and however they can. Now, hopefully a photo of some inconsiderate parking can be shown. A little further along the Broadway is Romeo's Piri Piri Takeaway. Add to this the 29029 restaurant with takeaway and the takeaways and restaurants in Station Approach and Moore Road. It is clear to see there is already an overabundance of takeaway and other eateries. Not only this, but there are, I believe, also over 100 fast food outlets on Just Eat that deliver food to Broadstone. And within this is a Domino's, which is approximately 6 minutes away on the Waterloo Road. As part of the nighttime economy, these add little, if any, increase in footfall during the day, and so add little, if anything, to the daytime economy and hence to the vitality of the area. This growing nighttime economy, while bringing some benefits, also brings many disadvantages, which can outweigh the benefits for those living nearby. I'm thinking especially in terms of vehicle noise and inconsiderate parking on pavements, on double yellow and no loading lines as in Grange Road, Station Approach, and that despite a car park being adjacent to several takeaways. I quote from one resident who stands to be significantly affected, and you heard her statement this morning, and I'll remind you that she says, if this is approved, this will no doubt lead to more parking issues, which are already a daily issue. Motorists already ignore the parking restrictions in Grange Road, constantly blocking our driveway. My husband also works on call for the emergency services and needs to leave our property without issue. She also went on to make comments about the air conditioning and the noise of that would create. To conclude, the Council is committed to revitalising high streets. This application will not add to the vibrancy or viability of Broadstone's High Street. It is more likely to have a negative impact on the daytime economy and remaining retail outlets, as demonstrated by the loss already of one popular and community-focused retail unit and the loss of a second should this application be approved, all compounded by the recent closure of the three last banks. I therefore believe this application to be contrary to the Poole Local Plan PP22 Part 2C. It does not enhance vitality, viability and diversity of the central retail area. PP22 Part 3A will result in or exacerbate the over-concentration of units in the non-retail use class, and PP23 Part 3A would individually or cumulatively harm the character of the area, creating an over-concentration of food and drink uses. In addition, there is the likelihood of more illegal parking arising from both takeaway deliveries and customers. There are already parking and safety issues arising from existing takeaway businesses, and I therefore urge the committee to refuse this application. And I thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooke. Shelley, is there anything that you've heard that you would like to come back on, please?
I can just respond to the element competition. The appeal decision from 189 Lower Blandford Road, the inspector did comment that the planning system does not seek to regulate specific occupiers of a retail unit, and a hot food takeaway is an identified town centre use under the local plan. Furthermore, it is not for the planning system to try and regulate market competition. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Members, who would like to kick off on this? Councillor Trent, please.
Thank you, Chair. Having represented two much smaller shopping areas in Broadstone, but still small shopping areas that have gradually fallen to takeaways and so on, I completely agree with the fears about takeaways damaging the rest of the shopping area. I do think that once you get above a certain level, and I'm amazed that the local plan allows 50%, because a much smaller proportion starts to undermine the character and the viability of the rest of the shopping area. And I agree with the concerns about this and its effect on the retail area. I do think that this is a well, one's been granted on appeal, so there's already been an increase of 1. This would increase it by 2. I just think we're getting dangerously close to having an unbalanced shopping area that would become like the part of Wallasdown that comes under my patch that is basically takeaway centre. Older Parade is dominated by takeaways. I just think that this is unacceptable, and even if our reasons for refusal are perhaps not as strong as they could be, I do think that this should inform the next local plan to look seriously at the protection of certain shopping areas, to keep them as retail areas and not areas of takeaways. So I say I'm inclined to vote against this application.
Thank you, Councillor Trent. Anyone else wishing to speak at this moment? Councillor Pedwin.
Thank you. As usual, this is more of a question. I note in the description that there is an upstairs flat ancillary to the shop because access is through the shop. On the plan on our document, page 74, there is indication of the existing stairs, and it says existing door replaced with fire rated keep locked door for maintenance to first floor only. So does that mean that this application, if granted, will lead to the loss of 1 dwelling?
Shelley, could you answer that question?
I believe the lawful use of the upstairs is actually an office, but the owners have used it as perhaps as accommodation. It's not completely clear. Perhaps Stacey and Ms. Pester, are you able to provide clarification on that one?
Hi, I think they were looking into potential use of the upper floor at some point, but it doesn't form part of this application. So it would be just ancillary storage space in connection with the use to the ground floor.
Thank you very much for that.
We are where we are. I'm not happy. I hope there would be access, alternative access provided, but it appears not.
Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. So whilst the Transport Roads Officer Highways haven't said any against it, obviously we've heard and we know from our own experience what these takeaway scooters and things like that. So what mitigation is there for that? What is the fallback? Is it antisocial behaviour? Could it come to environmental health or police? What is there for the residents? Thank you.
We have Lee on the line, Highways Officer. Lee, would you like to comment, please?
Yes, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Unusually for takeaways, this actual property does have a rear access into the property, so it does have a car park at the rear, which can be used for servicing, etc. With regards to scooters, scooters driving along the pavement is a road traffic act element, so the police would get involved in that. In terms of general antisocial behaviour, that's obviously the environmental health, not the highways issue. But I would point out this does have some servicing at the rear and rear car park access, and does have some parking bays at the front on the main road, which in the evening, when some of the other shops are closed, because the retail in the area generally closes around 5:30. Obviously, takeaways, it's generally evening trade, so there will be some parking bays at the front available that they're existing on street. So we've no objectives from our point of view.
Thank you for that. And then obviously the other thing is interesting to hear the fallback position that it could convert to a restaurant. So a similar that it would be more geared to the evening economy. So I unfortunately, I would, if no one else is wanting to speak, I'd move to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hilliard. Councillor Rice, please.
Yeah, I'm minded not to support this application. I think there is a difference between a restaurant and a fast food outlet, certainly in terms of the amount of traffic and the ambience and the vibrancy. It just has a different impact. Yeah, I would be in agreement with the reasons that the ward councillor stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Chairman. My issues are on the parking ramifications, really. Just to agree with Councillor Rice there that there's a huge difference between having a restaurant with people sitting in there for 3 hours at a time to Deliveroo, Just Eat, couriers turning up, and also can't see, you know, if a Deliveroo person gets an order, they're just going to go to the front of the off the pavement. It's absolutely obvious that they're not going to go around to the service road and pick up from there. So I really struggle with accepting that reason. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any further comments from anybody? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I will second the move from Councillor Hilliard to grant in accordance with the officer's recommendation, because I just can't see any planning reasons to refuse this. If the inspector hasn't seen anything wrong with the traffic about, was it 5 or 6 doors down, I can't see how we could rely on that as an argument here, just so close nearby. In terms of the PP22, if you look at the wording of that, it does give percentages when it comes to the vitality and vibrancy, etc., etc. And even with this development, it still comes in well above the necessary percentage before action can be taken under that particular policy. Still, I believe 11 or 12% higher. In terms of the noise, I do have a little bit of sympathy, but then I've lived for quite a few years above several pizza takeaways. I lived in one above, basically directly above a Papa John's on Wimborne Road, and frankly, I was never affected. Now that maybe I just had good glazing or good soundproofing under my flat, but I never had any troubles whatsoever. I just think that with the appeal decision that's there and all the reasons in there where the inspector struck down the vast majority of concerns that we had, I can't see how those don't apply to this. So I will second Councillor Hilliard's move and support the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Shelley, you wish to come back?
It was just a response on the parking. The inspector had made a brief comment in his report. He was stating the reason for refusal is not explicit in its concerns, but it has not indicated specific concerns in relation to highways, parking and deliveries, which has been raised in a number of objections. However, I see no reason why the proposed use would be any different in its requirements and the effect on highways and pedestrians to other existing users within the centre.
Thank you, Shelley. Councillor Farquhar, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've sat on the previous one, so I have some understanding of the concerns, and I think if I recall correctly, I spoke in objection to yet another fast food outlet, particularly a pizza one making an appearance. Myself personally, I lend a lot of weight to the ward councillor who actually represents in the area and seems to have a very clear grasp on what's replacing what and the detriment. I've got a question, because in the presentation that it was stated by the officer that the use of oil or grease would be kept to a minimum because it's predominantly baked goods of a pizza variety. maybe I'm not alone, because when I go to a pizza outlet, whether it be takeaway or to sit in, then I'm always tempted by the sides, which are normally fried, whether it be chicken strips, vegan strips, chicken wings and breadcrumbs, chicken chunks, potato wedges, cheese bites, etc. The point which I'm making is that would you also be able to clarify what do you actually mean by keeping the use of grease, fried oil cooking to a minimum? The other question which I'd ask is that there was no mention by the officer, which I heard, of one of the reasons for referring it to the planning committee, which was PP23 Part 3A, which is just for the viewing public, would individually or cumulatively harm the character of an area, creating an over concentration of food and drink uses. I'd appreciate it if the officer could sort of explain why it was that the mitigation for PP23 Part 3A was not mentioned in our presentation, particularly following it being raised by the ward councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I will ask Shelley to come back on that. I'll just point out on the issue of the smells, etc. Of course, there are no objections from environmental health on those grounds for this application. Shelley, would you like to come back on the other points, please?
And the first point with regards to the cooking, Ms. Pester, are you able to respond to that one?
Sorry, Shelley, but I can't allow the applicant to come back on that. I gave her one part earlier. This is for yourself to put your case forward, please. Thank you.
Right. I wasn't aware of the exact cooking standards. I took into account that it was what the extraction equipment that was required, that the noise attenuation, the environmental services officer was happy with what was being proposed. I tell Mr. Hodges, have you got anything else to add?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, so the application is for a hot food takeaway, so it's not a specific use. So we're not debating whether we should have a pizza takeaway or any other type of food cooked in the unit. We've given the details of the application to the environmental health officer. They've advised that the extraction details are acceptable. We've also got a condition 5 to cover the implementation of that extract and air conditioning equipment. So from our point of view, we satisfactorily covered that issue in terms of cooking smells and odours.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Anything further you'd like to come back with, please, Shelley?
My apologies that I haven't included PP23 in my report. I'm just checking through. Mr. Hodges, do you have anything else you can add to that one?
Thank you, Chairman. So okay, so I'm looking at PP23 and Part 3 talks about the evening and nighttime economy and says proposals that add vitality and viability to Pool's main evening nighttime economy centres will be permitted, provided that developments not either individually or cumulatively harm the character of the area or residential amenity in terms of noise, light and other emissions, or result in a harmful concentration of food and drink uses. So my understanding of PP23 is it does not define what a harmful level is. And you have within PP22 that specifically relates to the district centres a requirement that not more than 50% are in non-retail uses. So we set out in the report that the proposal doesn't reach that test because we are comfortably over 50% still in retail, and when viewed in the broader Class E, we're actually at 80 to 90%. So the health of the centre is actually really good. So any impact from this particular change of use does not breach the policy in PP22, and we don't have an indication of what level is harmful or any evidence to support a position that we are reaching a harmful accumulation of nighttime economy uses under PP23, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodges. Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you very much, Chair, for asking for that clarification. It is disappointing that it wasn't actually in the presentation or in the report. But based upon what was just said there, I'm minded to actually move to reject this application based upon the weight of the ward organizer, the ward councillor, because it seems to be fairly clear that this has been overlooked. And even though I appreciate from the officer's perspective that there's not a level, I think what's the point of actually having a member in the ward making representation unless they are quite aware of what is perceived to be an over-concentration of food and drink uses. The reason I say this is because Councillor Brooke went through a variety of pizza outlets, and I appreciate this is not concerned as regards a specific use, but it does say proposed change of use from a shop use class E to a hot food takeaway, installation of extraction equipment and external alterations. And the fact that Councillor Brooke in his representation went through the variety of hot food takeaway locations, I do believe that he's made the case that PP23 Part 3A would individually or cumulatively harm the character of the area, creating an over concentration of food and drink usage. So I believe the case has been made, and I actually move to reject the application based upon.
I'm sorry, Councillor Farquhar, but a move has been made to grant.
Ah, right, okay.
Thank
Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hodges.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. And I'd like to just qualify the previous advice because I have actually found what the limit is in the local plan. Now I'm going to just hopefully share the relevant policy, and I'm hoping if I can blow this up, you will be able nonetheless, to read this. So what it says in 768, there's high concentrations of food and drink uses can affect an adverse effect on the amenity of a locality. An over-concentration, if we go to the top, over-concentration of food and drink also reduce the offer of other essential shops and services and affect the diversity of shopping areas. An over-concentration is considered to be more than 70% of units of food and drink. And if we go to the report, you'll see that the level of takeaways in the Broadstone local area is at 10%.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Hodges. That's really helpful for people. So, Councillor Farquhar.
I agree with you, Chair. That is extremely helpful. But what it doesn't define at what time that those percentages are actually in use. It doesn't define whether or not it's in a nighttime economy, e.g. after the other retail units are shut. Is there any clarification as regards that is a time whereby the over-concentration has a negative effect on the inhabitants and the local residents? Because if the figures actually show that over 70% is the only properties, the only retail outlet, the only hot food takeaway locations are over 70% are hot food delivery locations, then surely it is in breach of what the guidelines which is given. E.g., what I'm saying is that your stationery shop, which was mentioned, your post office, are not open for the nighttime economy. However, your hot food takeaway outlets are. So interpreting the figures depends on what time of the day. And I think in the objections, it is actually referring to the delivery drivers who are making their deliveries in the evening after other retail units have actually shut.
Mr. Hodges, did you want to come back on that one?
Chairman, I just, my advice, professional advice would be that was not what the policy says. So if you were to go down that line, I think we have to back up again, please, Chair. So there's, Chairman, there's no requirement for the a test that you're being asked to make about whether they're open, at what point they're open. I'm not quite sure I understand the point being made, but it's simply talking about whether 70% of the units are in food and drink uses.
Well, I appreciate that. I think the point still stands that for the nighttime economy, that we all know as residents, we all know as people that may live in these communities, etc., that the premises which are open at that time after dark, after normal 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, are predominantly food and drink uses. So the balance is out. But the policy is what the policy is. And on this matter, it's particularly silent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Any further comments from anybody? Councillor Rice.
Actually, if you could leave that up. You said, did you say that documentation has said that there's 10%? I thought you said that it was 10% takeaway, whereas this was saying food and drink. So it was just clarification that that wasn't the same category, and whether we have a percentage for food and drink in that area. And yes, I think what Councillor Farquhar is explaining is that if you've got 10 shops open and 20 shops closed, is the percent, if all of those are food and drink outlets, then overall they don't breach the policy. But if you only look at the times that all the shops are open, then it would. I think that's what you're trying. Is that what you're trying to say? But I think you're saying that that doesn't matter.
Mr. Hodges.
Yes, Chair. I mean, it's para 32 of the report. So that defines the and 33. So that defines what's in non-retail and retail use. So at the moment, because you're at 63% actually are still shops, you're can't be anywhere near the 70%, even if you took the rest of the units as being restaurants, drink establishments, or hot food takeaways, because by default that can only be a maximum of 37%. So we can't be over that. We can't be over that level overall.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Hodges. In that case, we have a move by Councillor Hilliard, seconded by Councillor Johnson, to grant this in line with the officer's recommendations. I'll call names again as in order. For if you are in favour, against if you are not. Councillor Barron.
Against.
Councillor Borthwick.
For.
Councillor Farquhar.
Against.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Hilliard. For. Councillor Lepedevin.
Abstain, because I don't think we can make a truly democratic decision on this. I think our hands are a bit tied again.
Councillor McCormick.
For.
Councillor Rice.
Against.
Councillor Trent.
Against.
Councillor Dion.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
And myself, Councillor Kelsey, also for. Jill, could I get the numbers, please?
So that's 7 votes for, 4 votes against and 1 abstention.
So that application is granted in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Brooke, and thank you for anyone else that has taken part in that one. So moving on this morning, we will now go to an item that I've brought. Thank you, Councillor Hilliard. That I brought as an item of special and urgent business that we need to deal with today. And that is item 6C, land to the southeast of A338, known as Wessex Fields, and including part of the Royal Bournemouth Hospital campus. Before I move on with this, I must ask Councillor Rice if you are predetermined on this, because you have spoken vehemently against it at previous meetings, especially in cabinet meetings.
Thank you for clarification. I don't think I am.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. This is slightly unusual because what we're seeking today is powers that aren't often used at Planning Committee, and we're seeking, as the report says, delegated powers for myself and the Chairman of Planning to determine 2 applications. So this is where we depart with the norm. I'm not going to present the items now or ask you to debate the merits of those 2 applications today. The only thing where, or the only reason why this is, or these items are being brought to Planning Committee is because the council is currently the landowner, and we have to do that under our terms of reference. You may be asking why this is coming today and asking for delegated powers for myself and the chairman to determine the applications. It's because of the time issues which are set out very clearly in paragraphs 11 and 12 of the report. Put very simply, if we were to wait until the next meeting of this committee, which is on the 20th of April, that would severely jeopardise the ability of the applicant to deliver this road, which is essential for health infrastructure for not only for Bournemouth Hospital, but for BCP and the wider region as well. So there are two critical factors as I see it. The first is that we are asking for these delegated powers today. That will be useless if officers in my team don't actually act on that. The second point is that officers will be resolving the outstanding issues and determining those two applications if you agree with the recommendation. And I have seen some correspondence this morning, and Natasha McCann, who's the case officer, has been working hard and has been sending email correspondence today to the applicants who are in the room to make sure that we are covering off the outstanding issues. But the applications aren't in as advanced stage as we would like to bring a comprehensive report to you today. So I didn't want to be coming with a half-written report. So really, I don't need to say any more than point out both paragraphs 11 and 12, which explain, particularly paragraph 12, which is the statement from the applicant as to why it's essential that we have a fairly timely and urgent decision on these two applications. And I would recommend the recommendation as set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Jill.
Chairman, just for the purposes of the minutes, would you be able to confirm the reasons for urgency, which are as set out in paragraph 11 and 12 of the report?
Yes, I can confirm those are the reasons.
Thank you very much. In terms of speakers registered, there are none, but we do have a verbal written statement from Councillor Bobby Dove.
Please read. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies for not being able to attend this meeting, but this emergency application was brought to my attention on Tuesday, 14th of March, some 48 hours before this planning meeting, and therefore I was unable to change my long-standing commitments. I am making this statement on behalf of myself, Councillor Bobby Dove and Councillor Lawrence Williams. We are both Littledown and Iford Ward councillors, the area in which Wessex Fields sits. The history of Wessex Fields dates back to 2005, and the residents of Littledown and Iford are strongly urging us to seek a resolution for the site, which will utilise its full potential. A long and difficult battle was finally won in 2019, and at last residents felt that Wessex Fields would be realised as the gem in BCP's crown, unlocking employment and creating opportunities that really put us on the map. And to the centre of unlocking this land is the road that is being considered here today as part of application number 7/2023-9177-DZ. As ward councillors, we have a strong mandate from our residents to support this application. Its completion is integral for the successful unlocking of this site, which has been earmarked as a key employment site. It forms the foundation for the master plan of Wessex Fields. It means that traffic for the area is kept to roads servicing Wessex Fields and away from residential roads, on which we have 5 schools all in close proximity. Over the years, we have heard from many lobby groups, all of whom do not live in the ward and have their own agenda for trying to scupper the building of this road. They were very nearly successful in 2019 when we saw the introduction of the road to nowhere. Thankfully, common sense saw the day, and this application is being heard today. What you have today is a scheme which will support all means of travel and supports both cycling and walking, but it also provides the means of car and bus travel to those who are unable to use alternative forms of transport. So therefore, I have written to you today to ask that you finally give a voice to those who have lived with this scheme since 2005, to give a voice to residents who live in the ward, to give a voice to those who are excited about the prospects and opportunities that this development can bring with the adoption of the non-material amendments to the initial scheme. I therefore ask you to support the recommendations for this application.
Thank you, Jill. So, members, anyone wish to comment on this? Councillor Trent.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's going to be very much my usual comment, talking about putting something in or close to a flood zone, and the idea of actually taking out some trees to make that possible just makes a dubious situation worse. So I will probably abstain on this because we haven't got detail or plans or anything like that to go by, but I do think that we should carefully look at the situation with trees and avoid in the best possible way removing any trees from this site, because I just think that that is something which is just going to make a marginal situation worse. So just think trees again.
Thank you very much, Councillor Trent. Councillor Pedman. That's okay. You go first, and I'll come to this.
This has already been stated. This is a very controversial scheme. I'm not expressing any views on it because I haven't really studied it, because it hasn't come to planning as such. It's the principle of the delegation and the rushed decision, and I'm very much against that. This situation must have been known about months ago. Somebody, and I don't know who, whether it's the developer, the council, I don't know who, has been falling down on the job and not getting things moving as they should have done. And to now be rushed into allowing two individuals, and I'm not impugning their integrity or anything like that, but on a scheme of this nature, to leave it to two individuals, only one of whom is democratically elected anyway, expert and well, I can't think of the word, honest and everything, as they almost certainly are. I don't think it's right in the circumstances, in such a controversial decision. If something minor, fair enough. This is a major decision to be made with major implications for the area and employment and residents and all sorts of things. And I don't think it should be rushed through like this at a moment's notice. I can appreciate the economics, but that should have been thought about. The economic situation hasn't changed markedly in the last X number of months. We've known if prices were going up. We've known that, all that sort of thing. Somebody has not been getting on with the job they should have been, and I don't think we should be bounced into leaving it to two individuals to decide. It needs more careful thought.
Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Yeah, so with regards to Councillor Trent's comments, I don't think they're particularly relevant to the discussion, because this is purely looking at whether we should agree to allow the delegation. So I'm very concerned. I can't really see anything in statements 12. I'm told that these are extensive reasonings as to why it's essential, but there's not very much detail there apart from rising costs, but this is the same for everybody. There isn't very much detail about how it significantly impacts on the health of the whole of BCP, as is stated. It's a proportionally, it's a very small number of people that actually arrive from the north and using this route. But again, that's not part of what we're meant to be discussing. As far as I can see, there's no particular reason why this should be delegated, and I would be particularly concerned about a judicial for this. So it would be useful to get some information about the judicial review risk of taking a decision like this on such an important scheme. There was over 1,000 objections to the first scheme. It must have been one of the most objective schemes in the whole of the history of Bournemouth Council, so it seems very bizarre.
Thank you.
On the judicial review point, obviously the current position of officers is we consider it's possible to delegate the power, but that doesn't mean not members have to agree to delegate the power. So the choices of members as to whether they'd want to delegate the power to officers or not. So that's the officer legal position.
But I suppose it is at risk of a judicial review, just the same as any council decision.
Absolutely, any decision of the council would be open judicial review, and if someone felt there was an argument to say couldn't do this, then they would be entitled to potentially make that challenge.
And with regards to the risk of a judicial review, if a community member decided to put in a judicial review request for this, obviously there's a timescale to that. But is the council unable to move forward with a decision if a judicial review request is put in? And what is the timescale for that? And I'm just wondering whether realistically, if we're only talking about 1 or 2 weeks, it would be more sensible to bring it to planning committee.
So the answer is yes, there is a timescale, and yes, if someone submitted a judicial review in time, I think the council would almost certainly not proceed with doing anything pending a decision of the courts, on the basis that it might be found wanting if it did so. But I think we'd have to review that. But yes, normally there's a 6-week period for challenge, and so it would probably be of concern if there was an indication of judicial review tried to go ahead on that basis. So I suspect we probably wouldn't.
So with regards to that, it may be quicker to bring it to planning committee.
Yes, in that sense it would. Obviously, take a planning committee and those decisions can be subject to judicial, so you can keep these arguments rolling. So but I accept the point. Yes, in that sense, it would eliminate that risk if you took it to planning committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Just picking up on the judicial review process and the consideration of this application, or these applications that are before you today. A judicial review would be sought if due process hadn't been followed, and a judicial review would only be successful if it could be proved in the courts that due process hadn't been followed. I'm confident in asking for those delegated powers that we are following due process, and indeed in bringing this request, I've quite correctly, according to the council's procedures, discussed this and agreed it with the chief executive and with the chairman of this committee. So that I'm confident that we're following the right process in making this part of the recommendation and move towards a decision. I think also, if I can just clarify, both the chairman of the committee and myself would ensure, if we are granted delegated powers to determine these, we'd ensure that a sound planning decision is made. And indeed, as interim director of planning, that's what I do with all of the decisions that are delegated to me to make each year. And just to give you a bit of context, we determine about 5,000 planning applications a year. So I'm confident that both myself and the chairman are competent to make such a decision that would withhold challenge, and we would certainly be seeking the additional advice of the council's legal team to make sure that that's the case in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Councillor Farquhar, followed by Councillor Barron.
If I may ask a fairly blunt question, should the committee here, and I agree with others that have spoken, this is quite alarming, speed to sort of give away our powers, particularly since, to Mr. Fox's point, 5,000 planning decisions a year, we see a fraction of those. And again, it comes back to my earlier presentation, whereby the planning committee has a specific role in its purpose. So I'm minded not to support the delegation, but my blunt question is this: should the committee decide not to delegate these powers to the interim head of planning and the chair of planning, whoever that might well be in a few months' time, who picks up the tab for the cost of that delay? Does it come out of the public purse in any way, shape or form, or is it entirely down to the applicant with a raising costs? Because to my understanding, from what I would anticipate would be a very comprehensive explanation from the statement, it's not that comprehensive to me, to Councillor Rice's point, that why it is. So my question is, and it's a very blunt question, should we not delegate these powers, what is the estimated cost for that delay, and more importantly, from the public purse perspective and from the public interest perspective, who picks that cost up? And I appreciate that it may be commercially sensitive, but let me refine my question to who picks up the tab should we not delegate it?
Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to reiterate, the applicant is a public body, so there are public finances at stake here, and I understand the cost of the road scheme is in the region of about £2.5 million. So I think that's something I'd certainly be wanting to take away and have a conversation with the Hospital Trust and their representatives about the additional cost that would be brought about by delay if this wasn't taken into account. But certainly I think what's critical here is that we're seeking to mitigate additional costs and additional timeline if possible, with asking for this for this recommendation to be supported. What I must say, though, is that what we're not saying is that we are definitely seeking to approve or refuse these applications at this current moment in time, because that would be seen as predetermination and that would be entirely inappropriate. So we're simply asking for the ability to make the decision using those delegated powers rather than bring those back to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very uneasy with this proposal. And no disrespect to yourself, Chairman, but we really don't know who could be the next chair of planning. That's one worry there, and I'd be quite happy to see this come before committee. Actually, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barron. Councillor Rice, please.
Yeah, I also have a concern for the I don't know, the well-being of the staff. Obviously, full council agreed to spend £2 million of public money on this road, and planning committee is there to distribute that responsibility. To say that the senior planning officer is capable of, in principle, yes, saying yes or no, but to protect the staff member with the fact that we have invested £2 million into this, it would be a pretty difficult decision for one person to sort of say, actually, we don't support this application. And that's part of what the planning committee is about. Yeah, we're only talking a week or two.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Frankly, I think that we're arguing over a point of principle that is putting at risk a major development worth a significant amount of money and significant benefit to our residents over a point of, actually, I'd like to make the decision. I'd like to have a say in this. I'm not prepared to put this at risk based on me losing the opportunity to have a 5-minute speech on it if it came before us. You know, there are good reasons. Perhaps, as Councillor Lepedevin suggests, perhaps we've walked into this. But again, I don't think that's a reason to object to this just on a point of principle. The reason the urgency is there, and we don't have to worry about who the next chairman is, because this is going to be made before the next planning committee, which is before any change in chairman that I'm aware of. But also the fact is, in Councillor Hilliard's email that he sent to planning committee when was it, yesterday afternoon, he points out that the urgency is because the road price, the price of the land that this is held until the 17th of April, which is before the next planning committee. Once that date passes, the road will become significantly more expensive, as tenders will no longer be there, though they're no longer valid. So the cost will rise significantly if the powers are not delegated. Now, personally, I have faith in the interim head of planning, director of planning, and in the chairman, despite his choice of moustache. But I'm really not prepared to risk the loss of this over my ability to have a 5-minute speech in front of planning committee in a month's time. And I will be supporting the recommendation. The reason that it feels so weird, it feels so odd, is because we never do this. it's because it's the only time it's happened, certainly in my 4 years, and by the sounds of it, it's the only time it's happened in many councillors' periods beyond that. It feels weird because it is weird because it's not often used, and I think that the reasons have been given, they satisfy me, and I will support the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I've been indicated to me that the applicant would like to speak, and as this is an item of urgent business and we are in special grounds, if you like, I'm going to allow that to happen. Would you like to come forward, please?
Thanks very much. Sorry, Chair. Point of order. You can't let an applicant speak halfway through debate.
I can. It's my discretion. Thank you.
Under what reasoning?
Because I feel it is worth him telling us what we need to hear. And that's my reasoning, and that's my decision as chairman of this committee. Thank you. Please take a seat.
Again, that could have been known in advance.
We've only just been asked, Councillor Pedderman. So would you like to take your seat, please, and speak?
If I can introduce Mr. Steve.
You need to sit and use the microphone, please.
Can we just check with officers that this is
It is legal.
allowed?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, well, I'd like a minute just to think about that if I can.
Yep. If you want to adjourn, we'll adjourn for a minute. Just take time. Yeah, we're back live.
Chairman, apologise for that. I've just been trying to flip through the constitution and protocols as we spoke. I think I've got an answer, so I'll try and explain it as best I can. So under the BCP Council Constitution, you have provisions under Part D for public participation at meetings. But the constitution says that procedures not applied to planning committee and the council and the planning committee can adopt its own protocols. So I turn to the protocol adopted by planning committee in relation to public speaking. And what it says, and I'll read out 1.1 because I think that probably is the best I can do on this. The following protocol facilitates opportunities for applicants to express their views on applications which are to be considered at a planning committee meeting. And we know that for most situations for planning committee, that would enable people to speak. So if you felt the protocol applied, then I'd say probably it's within the scope of the protocol to allow an applicant generally to speak. However, there's an argument I can see as to whether this is considering an application. But what the protocol goes on to say there is it does not therefore relate to any other item in respect of which public speaking should only be permitted at the discretion of the chair. So it does seem to recognise that even if it fell outside the protocol, the discretion of the chair is whether someone should be allowed to speak or not. So I think probably my view would be it's within the spirit and principle of that protocol to say it's at the discretion of the chairman to allow someone to speak or not.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead and speak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone. So I'm Steve Killen. I'm the Transformation Director for University Hospitals Dorset. I think the first point is that the reason it is here is it's not a major change. It's here as a technicality because of the application from the University Hospitals Dorset, but some of it is on BCP land. So I think that's part of the technicality. I've got a few points, but I was also going to comment on the value because I was listening to the debate about you and trying to understand and quantify the cost of delay. So I think this enables healthcare for Dorset. I think it is great for the residents of Dorset and it helps create access to the major emergency hospital, which is part of the requirements or what we've set out for our healthcare strategy for the whole of the Dorset system, including all citizens and patients in the BCP area. It is the first phase of the spine road that establishes the main roundabout and junction into Wessex Fields and that Councillor Dove and Councillor Williams have supported. It is also a contractual requirement because the road is being built by BCP for the trust. So when we bought the land, this is a contractual requirement for BCP to build this road as part of the land sale. It has support from local councillors and adjoining neighbours. It will remove traffic from the Castle Lane East Junction, making access easier on and off the site. And the urgency is because the price is held till the 17th of April. Now, to clarify in a moment.
He's not talking to the point. I'm sorry, he's pushing the scheme, not the reasons for the...
No, I'm going to... What we wanted. Now, just to confirm, has no objections coming into this, but you asked about value then. So you asked about what the value was. The scheme value is about 4.3 to 4.5 million pounds. That is being paid for by BCP. We have given a big contribution of that as part of the land sale, and I won't talk about that because of the commercial nature of that agreement. We have seen prices across the industry, the construction industry, and within my transformation director's role, I'm building the beach building at the front of the hospital, just completing the barn theatres and the new surgical block at Poole Hospital, and we're hoping for additional developments across Dorset. We're working collaboratively across Dorset, and we've got 5 of the new hospitals that are in the new hospital programme for government. We've seen costs increase in the order of 10 to 15%. So it's hard to quantify, but the prices are locked in until the 17th of April. We've had them locked in since December. We've been going through the fine points to try and get this over the line. If we miss the 17th, there is a very real risk that we could see in excess of a 10% increase on that £4.5 million, which is straight out of the taxpayer funds. So it is a decision that is with you, but I was sitting at the back and listening, and I felt I needed to give you a quantification of the value of the delay if you wanted to have that decision, and I was in support of Councillor Johnson's point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So back over to members. Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Chairman. If time's of the essence here, and it's an urgent matter, we've had special committees before. Why can't we have a special committee for this? Thank you.
There is no reason, and I will go to Mr. Fox.
Yes, thank you. I think it's a reasonable request. The reason we're asking for this or these applications to be delegated now is because I'd like to set aside the financial reasons because they're not necessarily material planning considerations. We're wanting to make sure all the consultees are satisfied with the applications, and we believe that that can be done within the next fortnight. So there is no reason why we can't come back with a special committee if that's the decision of the planning committee. But I would want to make sure that that was within the timescale that the applicant is comfortable with in terms of their timetable. Obviously, I'll leave the decision up to you, so we can bring that back if needed as an urgent special committee meeting. Thank you.
Just as a timescale for members' help, Mr. Fox, how long would it take to get a meeting ready and prepared if it was necessary, if that's the way people went?
I think it's not just the getting the meeting ready and prepared, it's us being satisfied that we've addressed those outstanding planning consideration issues. I would have thought a fortnight from now would be reasonable, but I'd certainly be wanting to check that that was within the timeline that would be acceptable for the applicant as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further comments from members? Councillor Farquhar.
Yes, Chair, and I appreciate that we may feel that we can't discuss money, but I appreciate the 435 million for the construction of the road paid for by BCP, which should get talked about. So, because it helps my decision-making process, because I ask my blunt questions of what's the reality here of not making a decision to delegate these powers today, is the reality is that not the public purse, e.g. central, but directly to the residents and the taxpayers of BCP, it's £435,000. I think I'll be correct, because the sort of sum which would be the increase would be in the region of 10%. So, and if it's not 10%, then you're looking at asking our taxpayers, BCP council taxpayers, to pay £500,000 for not delegating the powers today. So that helps a great deal in my reasoning for the decision here. I might well question how much we actually agreed with BCP to actually pay towards the road. It sounds somewhat different to what was agreed at full council, but I think personally I'd be remiss for protecting our own council taxpayers here, is that we risked a delay for the full weight of the planning authority and the expertise there to look at all the aspects in as much time as we could allow them by not delegating. So I would support the delegation of the power, because in reality, in hard money, it means an extra 435, maybe even £500,000 that our council taxpayers would be expected to stump up should we actually delay. So that's why I would be supporting the actual move to delegate the powers.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Councillor Rice.
Well, just going on from Councillor Barron, I think we have a solution here that is more democratic and open. It allows the officers to get the work done quickly, but it also allows the residents to know that decisions on council-owned land are being made in a transparent way and not being rushed through. So I would make a move to suggest that we move it to a special committee.
I'm happy to second that.
2 seconds. Yeah, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I can see entirely why a committee may want to do that. What I might suggest is a slight alteration in that this, obviously, a lot of the controversy here is around application A. Application B is far more minor and much less contentious, if contentious at all. And I'd be content to delegate that one and bring application A alone to a special committee, if that would work with officers. I think that may save them some time if they only have to focus on the one that is actually the bone of our contention here, if members are minded to support the move that's on the table.
Can I just have a bit, the main paper was about both of the applications, so if I can just have a moment to check through it.
Yeah. Mr. Fox, your thoughts on that?
Helps if I press the button. I'm comfortable with whatever the committee decide on in that respect, because as I've set out in the report, that we as officers are happy for the two to be considered together. But certainly, if it would enable us to get the non-material amendment determined quicker, then I think I'd be grateful for that. Thank you.
I think I'd be happier to see them both together, to be honest, because they do relate to each other.
Fine. In that case, we will move to a vote. I am actually going to, I was very keen to listen to what George had to say there. Sorry, Councillor Farquhar. And I totally agree with what he's saying. We are putting a great deal of emphasis on spending money that we don't want to spend and may well have to spend, which is already tight. If we delay this application, I'm very mindful that something is going to have to give. We would have to be spending money on other things, which we don't really be wanting to do. So at this moment in time, I will not be supporting the move to refuse this, but we will go through to the vote as is. We have a move to refuse by Councillor Rice, seconded by Councillor McCormick.
Point of order there. Wouldn't you be voting to delegate powers to yourself anyway? So surely that's a conflict of interest.
I may not be the chairman. Who knows?
But we've already been told that.
Yeah, but that's beside the point. As a chairman, I am often asked to be delegated to sign off things within the planning remit. So there's no conflict of interest.
The minutes, for example. Every single meeting we ask to delegate powers to
Fair
the
enough.
chairman.
Yep. Councillor Farquhar.
If I may, Chair, I may have misunderstood Councillor Rice, but I believe that she was in support of Councillor Barron's proposal that it was delegated, and so because you said for refusal of the application, I don't really understand
She
the wording,
doesn't want
the wording of the motion.
Yeah, she doesn't want us to delegate the powers.
Yeah, no, George, to have a special committee.
Yeah.
To have a special committee instead. I thought we were voting on a special committee.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, can you just clarify? We are voting on whether to have a special committee or not.
Yes.
Right.
So
No, is your move should be whether or not we are going to accept the delegation of powers or not.
Right. Okay. So I hadn't said that. Yeah. Because I had missed out that bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is that your
moving,
move?
So I'm moving to refuse the proposal and to move that. Depending on that.
You can't refuse a move and make a move at the same time.
Okay, but everybody should know that consequently it would be moved to then put forward a special committee instead.
Well, it may be. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll firstly go to the move to refuse the scheme of delegation. Is that correct, everyone? Everyone happy with that move? Yep. So myself, I am against that move. Councillor Johnson?
Against.
Councillor Barron?
For.
Councillor Borthwick? Could you say that louder? Against, thank you. Councillor Farquhar?
Against.
Councillor Hall? Councillor Hill, Councillor Le Pedevin?
Against. Sorry, I'm still in a total muddle about what we're voting.
You're voting on whether or not we are accepting the delegation of power.
And
right, and I'm against accepting the delegation, so that is right.
For this move. For the move. You're for the move.
You're for the move.
Yeah, you're for.
You're against the move. Sorry, Councillor Hall.
Chairman, do you want to start that again?
Yeah, I'm going
confused.
to.
Maybe we could have
Please, if we could all listen to what is being said and stop speaking over each other, we may get some common sense here. The move is to refuse the application for delegated powers to the head of planning. Okay? And the move is to refuse that. So, as I said, I am against that move. Councillor Johnson?
Against.
Councillor Barron?
For the move.
Councillor Borthwick? Councillor Farquhar?
Against.
Councillor Hall? Councillor Le Pedevin?
For the move.
Councillor McCormick?
For.
Councillor Rice?
For.
Councillor Trent?
Abstain.
Councillor Dion?
Against.
That the numbers, please.
So that is 6 votes against the move, 4 votes for and 1 abstention.
So that move is lost. We will therefore go to a second move, which I will make to go in favour of the delegated powers. Could I get a seconder for that move, please? Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So going through again, I am for the move. Councillor Johnson? For. Councillor Barron?
Against.
Councillor Borthwick? For. Councillor Farquhar? For. Councillor Hall? For. Councillor Lepedevin?
Against.
Councillor McCormick?
Against.
Councillor Rice?
Against.
Councillor Trent?
Abstain.
Councillor Dion?
For.
Could I get the numbers, please, Jill?
So again, that is 6 votes for the move, 4 votes against and 1 abstention.
So that move is carried in line with the recommendation that has been put before us. Thank you very much, members, and thank you everyone for today's meeting. We have one final meeting where, if you're really good, I will bring in cakes and things if I get time to make them, and look forward to seeing you all at then. Thank you very much. This meeting.